name's Phil Carney, and he specializes in craziness, and he has a real impact on places he goes, and he works with veterans because he is a veteran himself. So let's give him a hand, and Phil, come up here at this time, will you?
That's good. That'll work. Look how cute that looks.
Hold that close to your lips.
Close to my lips. Hey guys, good to see you tonight. Man, this is awesome. Several months ago, Joe explained to me what this was all about, and invited and asked if I'd come and share some here tonight. And man, I was all in. So I've been really looking forward to just being here and seeing what's going on and being with you guys. It is my honor, I promise you. And I was very anxious to be here. Not because I think you need to hear, what I have to say so much, but I just wanted to meet you guys and just be a part of what's happening here. This is awesome. So I'm honored. I mean that. That's not just opening remark cliche words. I really am honored to be here and to just have a few minutes to say some words to you guys. You are my brothers and my fellow vets. And I am really glad to be here tonight. So let me find out what we got in the room here. Where's our Army guys at tonight? How about a shout? Just shout it out, huh? Yeah. Okay, where's the Navy tonight? We got the Navy here. Got a lot of Navy guys tonight. How about Air Force? Do we have some Air Force guys right there? Look at that guy jump to his feet, man. That's awesome. How about Marines? Got any Marines? Hoorah. Yeah, I got a lot of Marines. Coast Guard. Any Coast Guard tonight? No Coast Guard? Somebody go find a Coastie somewhere. Bring somebody in here. All right. Man, we appreciate each and every one of you and the branches that you guys served in. And we appreciate you so much. And thank you to all the men that are here tonight, military or maybe you didn't serve in the military, but thank you so very much for being here and being a part. This is kind of a man's thing tonight, right? And, the great thing about being together with men and speaking to men, it's really different. And I really like to talk to men. I'm a pastor of a local church over in Pendleton, and I pastor a church there, so, I speak to men and women, on any given Sunday. But man, when I have an opportunity to talk to just men, it's really special because guys are just different, right? And nothing against women. Nothing against women. I love women. I married one. Been married, 38 years. Good for me, huh? You're probably relieved to hear that. I have 4 daughters and 1 son. And my son, he served 10 years in the Army, had 2 deployments, one to Iraq, one to Afghanistan, but he had 4 sisters growing up. He was the only boy, man. Sometimes he'd just look at me and go, "Dad, let's just me and you go somewhere." And so, guys are just different. We just, we communicate different than women, so it's always cool when you get just a room full of guys because we communicate different. For one, it doesn't take as long. I try to be a good husband, and I read all the books, on how to understand your wife and how men and women are different and all of that, and it's helpful. But, one thing I read, it said that women communicate, or women talk in circles and men talk in straight lines. It's kind of like, women kind of like a plane circling an airport, it's just kind of a gradual coming in, and men just, it's just like direct approach. They just come straight in, and men and women just communicate completely different. When I come home, I'll ask my wife, what's for dinner? Because that's really what I want to know. And she'll begin to tell me, you'll relate to this, you know how this works, and not that there's anything wrong with it, not that one's right or wrong, but it's just we're different, we communicate different, men communicate different. So what's for dinner? And she said, well, I wanted to have steak, but I forgot to take it out and thaw it out, so I decided we're going to have chicken. So I went down Albertsons because I have coupons for chicken. So I got down to Albertsons, and you know what? They were repaving the parking lot, so I had to park. There wasn't that many parking places, so I parked on the side. So when I got in the store, guess who was there? Janet. And you know what? She's having another baby. And can you believe what they're going to name the baby? They're going to name the baby Alice. It sounds so similar to their first baby. And so I talked to her, and when I was talking to her, she was explaining to me, don't buy the chicken here because over at Safeway, she just came from Safeway, chicken's on sale. So I just said, I'm with you. So we both went over to Safeway to get the chicken. Well, guess who we ran into at Safeway? Dorothy was at Safeway, and so she talked me into not buying the chicken because and I'm still like, can't you just say chicken? Just say chicken. And it's interesting, it's true, it's, women talk in circles, men talk in straight lines. My son that I mentioned a minute ago, he just got married a couple of years ago. He held out till he was 30 years old, and he got married, and they're expecting their first child the end of December, and they're having identical twins. Identical twin girls. He's having girls. And so he and I went deer hunting a couple of weeks ago. We went deer hunting, and they had just, they had gone in for the ultrasound and, checking out the babies and all the different stuff about the babies. And so he and I went hunting, and we were hunting all day. We had a great day, shot some deer, came back home, and my wife asked me, she said, how was the hunting trip? And I said, oh, well, great, and she goes, well, how's Matt feeling about the babies? I know they had the ultrasound. I said, I don't know how he's feeling about it. She goes, well, didn't you guys talk about, about the ultrasound and the twins and, and so on and so on? And I said, no, we didn't talk about, well, how do you think he feels about it? I go, well, I don't know how. We didn't talk about our feelings at all. We just were you were together all day long, and you never once talked about the twins and the ultra. Never mentioned it, never came up once. She just couldn't understand it. It just blew her mind, So you guys, you know how that works, and it's just so good to be able to be with guys, right? Just guys, and because we just talk different, so we just don't think the same way. So we're gathered here tonight, for the purpose of just talking guy talk. So we'll come in on direct landing and get this done, but we're just going to have some guy talk tonight. And with all my heart, I simply want to say to each and every one of you and all of us, thank you so very, very much for your willingness to serve this nation. This is what I know about you as a fellow veteran. I know this about you. I haven't met all of you, but I know this about us, and I know this about you. I know first and foremost, you did not serve in the military for any special recognition. And I know that you didn't serve in the military for convenience. And I'm positive you didn't serve for the great pay or any special status. What I know about you, my brothers, is that you served out of a sense of call and a sense of need. And there was something within you that said, I'm going to respond to that, and I'm going to answer that, and I'm going to serve. and you simply put it all on the line, and what you gave this nation was yourself. And this nation will always be grateful for giving yourself. The most honorable and valuable reward that all of us received for our service, wherever it was, whenever it was not pinned on our chest. It wasn't a patch on our shoulders. But the most valuable honor that we received was we received each other, the brotherhood of being a veteran. Of fellow vets, you share a bond that is very difficult to understand and very difficult to divine. But it is your greatest reward for serving is your fellow veterans. It's one another. It is a brotherhood. 3 years ago, some of you may remember this, 3 years ago, that bond and that brotherhood of American veterans was displayed on national television through different news media to the entire nation. Some missed it, but I remember sitting and watching 3 years ago when the Congress and the United States government voted to shut down the government. You remember that? They shut down the government. And in Washington, D.C., at the Veterans Monument in Washington, D.C., because the government was shut down, all the monuments in Washington, D.C. were closed. And they put barricades in front of all the monuments saying they were closed and no one could visit them. But there were busloads of World War II veterans that had flown all the way to Washington, D.C. to visit those memorials and those monuments. And when they got there, they were told that they couldn't visit them. And it was on the news, and I remember sitting there watching it. And that went on for about 6 hours, and all the veterans began to rally. World War II veterans, Korean veterans, Vietnam veterans, Afghan veterans, Iraqi veterans, Somali veterans, and within 24 hours, thousands of United States veterans emerged on this monument, and they literally moved the barriers and allowed the veterans to come in and look at the memorial. And I remember sitting and watching that, and the news picked it up, and of course then everybody was backpedaling and saying, well, maybe we should let them in. Well, it was too late. They already let themselves in. And I remember sitting there and thinking that is such a powerful demonstration of what happens in the hearts and in the lives of veterans who have served this nation. That brotherhood and that bond never wears out, never grows cold, it never dies. And that is the greatest reward that you and I received for our service, is simply the brotherhood and the bond that was formed among fellow veterans. That was a demonstration of the bond and love that exists between vets. And whether you served in World War II or Korea or Vietnam or Grenada or Somalia or the Persian Gulf or Kosovo or Iraq or Afghanistan or here at home or in other places overseas, we are brothers and we take care of each other. And that is a profound and powerful thing. And that's really, really important to know and to understand, because we all struggle in many different ways when we come home. Some of us came home a long time ago. And some of us maybe have come home more recently. But there's a struggle when veterans come home from service on many different levels. And that's when we really need to take care of each other. Veterans need to take care of each other, that family and that bond and that brotherhood. We need to make every effort to take care of one another now the same way we did when we were in service together, because we really need each other, because nobody understands a veteran like a veteran. And, we just have to take care of each other. About 3 months ago, it was in September, it was the third year that I was asked to speak at a men's military retreat from Joint Base Lewis McChord up in Tacoma. There's also naval personnel that were involved, so there were Army, Air Force, and Navy personnel. And these were active duty military. And all of these guys had been deployed, most of them multiple times, to Iraq or Afghanistan. And they were really, really struggling. Some of them were trying to stay in the military, but they were having a lot of problems from the fallout of their deployments and what they experienced, most of them combat veterans. And this is a retreat that the chaplains on the bases, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army chaplains put this retreat together for these men. It's not mandatory, it's voluntary, the guys go to it. But they take them to an amazing retreat center. They have all sorts of recreational stuff for them, really cool things for them to do. But they also bring counselors, marriage counselors, PTSD counselors. They bring in different people, professional people to help these guys. And then they bring in a speaker, which I was asked to be that speaker and just kind of tell my story and encourage these guys to get some help, because they're really, really struggling with stuff. They're not talking about it. And you know how it is, goes back to that, how we're different from women. Guys just don't, we struggle a little more opening up and talking about things sometimes. And what I heard at that retreat is these guys were together and they were in an atmosphere that they began to feel safe, and they take all the rank off. There's no rank. The chaplains are there. These professionals are there to help these guys. And my job was to encourage them to actually go talk to somebody. And as we began, it was a 4-day retreat. As you begin to talk, what I began to hear over and over and over and over again is these guys would say, I've never told this to anybody. I've never felt like I can talk about this. I've never talked to anybody about this. I've never been able to really open up and share. I don't really have anybody in my life that I can be real with and talk to about things. And I just thought, man, that's amazing. And these were active duty guys, and that's even compounded more oftentimes when guys are discharged and they're out of the military. There may be things on board that you just never, ever talk about. And we just heard that over and over and over. And the thing that's the second time, the thing that is profound to me, and of course I'm a pastor, I'm a Christian guy, and I believe in creation. I believe God created all this. But here's the thing that I think is profound. If you go back to original creation, when God created everything that he created, and when he created people, he created us for a perfect environment, according to the Bible. He created us for perfection, not weakness, but perfection. And so God didn't create us he didn't give us any equipment to deal with imperfection, because we were never supposed to. It's kind of like, God put, originally, if you believe the Bible, originally, God created people and placed them in a perfect environment. There was no death, there was no war, there was no sickness. It was perfect. And then things went wrong, and that wasn't God's fault, that was my fault. But here's the point that I'm making. Here's the point that I'm making. We're not created with the equipment to handle traumatic stuff. We don't have the gear. We're not created to deal with it because we were never supposed to have to. It's like if you took a chicken and put it in the middle of a lake, it would really have a problem because it's in an environment that it's not created for. You can't deal with that environment because it's not created for a lake. If you put a duck in the middle of the lake, he's good to go because he's created for that environment. People, human beings, me and you, were not created for an environment like we're in right now. Now, God's going to do something about that in the future, but my point is nobody deals with trauma and traumatic things well. That's why we say, I can't handle this. You know why we say that? Because we can't. We're not equipped for it. And so that could apply to all sorts of things in life, but certainly that's what happens to vets. We're sent off to do things that we have the physical equipment for, but we don't have the emotional equipment. We're trained to do things, but there's no training for what we experience and how it affects us. And so we need help with that. And one of the greatest helps with that is being able to talk about it with somebody that understands it. And my story is like many of your stories. I grew up in a really dysfunctional, violent home. My dad was a drunk, one of those deals, and I just grew up in a horrible home environment. And as a kid, man, I just wanted to belong to something that mattered. And so right out of high school, 1969, I joined the Marine Corps. That was a good decision. That was worse than my dad. But nonetheless, I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18 years old. I'd just been out of high school a couple of months, and of course, 1969, joined the Marine Corps. You know where you're going, So off to Vietnam it was, and I was an 0311 infantry, and did my tour in Vietnam, and came back from Vietnam, and I was really a wreck, and I really appreciate the fact that you were kind of emphasizing the Vietnam vets tonight, along with all veterans, but the Vietnam vets, when the Vietnam vets came home, it's a historical fact. Now, we really ate dirt, we weren't welcomed very well. And I can remember what that felt like, and that just kind of compounded the issues already. And man, I wanted to go back to Vietnam. I tried to sign up for a second tour, but by then it was 1971, and they were starting to pull the Marines out of Vietnam, and so there was no chance to go back. And but I really missed that brotherhood and so on. And so anyway, I got discharged from the Marine Corps, and I was really having problems, like really serious problems. And of course, back then, nobody knew what those were. There was no diagnosis of PTSD yet. There certainly wasn't any treatment for it, but I was just really having some bad issues. And I was just coming apart, and I couldn't sleep, flashbacks, all the stuff that was common, or that is common, especially to combat veterans. And I remember I got so desperate that I decided I got to go talk to somebody, and so I decided to go to the VA hospital. This was in Southern California, where I grew up, and so I remember I drove myself to the VA hospital. And I walked in, and this lady behind the reception desk said, "How can I help you?" and so on and so on. I showed her my DD-214 and so on, and she said, What's "Well, why are you here?" And I said, I don't know. And I was choking back the tears. I go, "There's something wrong with me." And she said, "What do you mean there's something wrong?" I said, "There's something wrong with me. There's something not right." I said, "I can't sleep. I hear things. I'm having all kinds of problems." And she looked at me kind of funny, and there was a whole bunch of people seated there in the room, and she said, "Come with me." And she took me. And this is the truth. It's not funny, but it's kind of funny. She took me into a closet, like a utility closet, where they had like paper towels and toilet paper, like a supply closet with mops. And she took me into this closet, and she rolled this chair in there, one of those round doctor exam chairs on wheels. She rolled that in there, and she said, "Here, sit here, just wait here." And she closed the door. And I was just sitting in there with paper towels and toilet paper and mops. And I sat there for quite a while, and this doctor came in, and he said, "What's the problem?" And he said, I said, well, I told him, all my symptoms and what I was struggling with. And this guy lit into me, and he said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "Do you realize how lucky you are? You got your arms, your legs, you're alive." He said, "You know how many guys didn't come home?" As if, well, no, I have no idea. I was the one that was there. And, I don't blame the doc. He was probably doing the best he could. I guess he was trying to snap me out of it kind of thing, because they just didn't know. But he gave me this long lecture on how lucky I was, and he said, "You need to just get on with your life and stop talking about it." So I did. And so I didn't talk about it. And so I began to medicate myself. I began to drink heavily and use whatever form of medication I could get my hands on in any form. And so for about the next 8 years, I just didn't talk about it. If somebody asked me about Vietnam, I just had a couple of funny stories I'd tell them, and it was no big deal. And I was a mess, and so I just began to medicate myself. Well, I won't give you all the details, but along the way, I had a friend that was a Christian guy, and he began to tell me about he's one of those guys, we used to call him Jesus freaks. This guy was always talking about Jesus, and he'd find me, I'd be all drunk and high, and he'd be sitting there reading stuff to me out of the Bible, and he was one of those guys, and I go, that sounds pretty crazy, man, that's pretty wild. And anyway, through a chain of events and through this guy, I made a commitment to Christ, and I became a Christian, and things began to change, and I got married and had a wife, and started having kids. We felt a leading to ministry, so ended up going into ministry and pastoring a church, and on and on and on. And we had come from Southern Nevada. We started a church in Southern Nevada, so. I'm like, got this Christian thing going now, and most of my life's pretty squared away, but I got this dark secret really tucked away, really, really good and well defended, and, I had learned how to put all the defenses up and how to handle stuff, but, I didn't sleep, I'd get up at 3 in the morning and go to work most of the time, that kind of thing, and so we had moved to Oregon, to the south coast of Oregon. We were pastoring a church in Coquille, Oregon. And we were pastoring a church there. And one day, I just hit the wall. And I started crying, and I couldn't stop. And I was having all kinds of, I was just breaking down. My defenses were starting to fail me. And I had stuff tucked away, and there's that famous Bible verse that Jesus, everybody quotes, "The truth will set you free." Have you ever heard that one? Jesus said the truth will set you free. That's only half of what he said. He said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." In other words, only the truth you acknowledge will set you free. And I had something really painful tucked way deep in my heart that I didn't acknowledge, that I didn't talk about, that I didn't deal with, and it was very painful, and it was very destructive, and it was really causing me problems. And I had got so tired, I couldn't manage it anymore. And the lid started coming off, and I had a really good friend, another pastor friend who pastored a church in Vancouver, who was also a Marine. He was a couple of years older than me, actually 4 years older than me. He was with 9th Marines. They were called the Walking Dead. And he's seen some bad stuff. And my wife called him. We were really close friends, and told him what was happening. And he came all the way down to Coquille and sat down with me, and he said, "Phil, I know what's going on. I know what you're feeling." He said, "The exact same thing happened to me 4 years ago." He said, "You need to go to the VA." I said, "I ain't going to the VA. They'll put me in a mop closet." I ain't going. He's going, "No, it's not like that anymore, man." He says, "They got really good programs now, and man, you can get some help there. You need to go to the VA." And I said, "I ain't going to the VA." He's going, "Man, I'll go with you." He said, "I'll go with you. You need to go down there." Again, long story short, so he takes me to the VA, and they do a workup, and they spend some time with me, and it was really good. It was like they understood what was going on. They started telling me what was happening, and they gave me this diagnosis. "Well, you got, post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's, never been trained." And they walked me through it. It was just awesome. And then they said, we got a program. It's a 60-day in-house program. We highly recommend you go through this program. You check yourself in for 60 days. You don't have to stay. You can leave anytime. And so I thought, wow, that sounds kind of wild, man. It's mental health. It's like they're going to put me in here, and I'm afraid if I go in, I ain't getting back out, But it was new territory. So I did. I talked to my board at my church, and the church was so good. They said, "Pastor, you go, you get help, you do whatever you need to do. We'll be here when you get back." But in my mind, I really thought, well, this is the end. It's over. It's as soon as I check in there, that's going to be the end of it. My wife will leave me. They'll keep me in here. It'll be done. So I went to the VA hospital in Roseburg, and checked in. I had my little folder the day I checked in, and I walked up to the elevator, and I pushed the button to go up to the 3rd floor, and it says mental health, and I pushed the button, and I was choking back the tears, and I prayed, and I said this. I said, "God, you've got to be with me in this, or I can't do it." And I got on the elevator, and I went up to the 3rd floor, and I got off the elevator, and I walked up to the counter with my admitting stuff, and the nurse said, "Oh, Mr. Carney, Dr. Barr wants to see you immediately. He's the head psychologist, and he said as soon as you get here to bring you to his office." And I went, "Oh, it's worse than I thought." And we're walking down the hall, and I said, or she said, "This is. Do you know Dr. Bogar?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "Oh, I thought maybe you had met him before, because he never does this." And I went, "Oh, this is bad." Like he read my chart, and they're going to do like the shock thing or something. So I walked into his office, and there's this distinguished gentleman, this kind of like you'd expect a psychologist to look. And he stands up and he said, "Reverend Carney," he said, "I'm so glad you're here." He said, "I was reading your chart," and he said, "I see that you're a pastor," and so on. And he said, "I just knew you'd probably be having a really, really hard time with this today." And he said, "I just want you to know I'm a Christian man as well." He said, I'm a man of faith and attend a local church here in Roseburg." And he said this. He said, "I just wanted to meet with you and tell you God's going to be in this with you." It was word for word what I had prayed before I pushed the elevator. And I went, wow. God was with me, and it was the most spiritual experience. It was better than any church service I've ever been in. Mental health is where God's at. And I spent 60 days there. and with 11 other vets. They only allowed 12 guys to go through in a group of 12 at a time. And it was the most amazing experience. And for the first time in my life, I was able to talk about what had been hurting me and tormenting me and really bothering me. And I learned that talking is healing if you talk to the right person, a safe person. Talking is healing. And to be able to talk with 11 other guys who would look at each other and go, "You do that too? I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only one that felt that way." And we just had this amazing journey, and I just learned about what was going on with me, and it was a great time of healing and resolve. And hey, I still got my issues, but I know what they are, and I know how to deal with them. And a big part of that is just having another man in your life that you talk to. That's not limited just to vets. Every man needs that. You need somebody that you can talk to, that's real, that's honest, because the truth that you acknowledge will set you free. So guys, I just want you to know, my fellow veterans and every man in this room, I love you with all my heart. You're my brothers. You're my brothers. And I just encourage you tonight. I don't know what this means. I'm sure that this means different things to different people. And I didn't come up here tonight to just, talk about me. It's not about me, but talk about us, because we're men and we need each other. And we're in this thing together. And if you're a vet tonight and man, you just don't have somebody to talk to, you need somebody to talk to. And veterans, we need to help each other. The great was when the Iraq and when those guys started coming home, that generation behind us, our kids, when they started coming home from their deployments, vets that were in the airports meeting, shaking their hand, home and talking to them and saying, "Hey man, you need to talk to somebody about what and celebrate and express honor for all of the veterans and all that you've done. I love you with all my heart. I appreciate you. And help each other. Help you know a fellow vet that's not, get a hold of him and have some straight talk. But anyway, I'm just honored. Thanks for letting me just be a part of this and share my heart with you tonight. And this is a great evening, and I so appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I honor you, and I love you, my brothers.